Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. Dust still choked the air when the dropship's ramp hissed open. Captain Hank Brandt stepped into the boiling light of Vorash, boots sinking into the scorched soil. The air smelled of melted circuitry, ozone, and something older, ash soaked in blood. Around him, jagged rocks framed a wasteland carved up by years of civil war. The ceasefire negotiated before his arrival had granted them a 6-hour window. It was enough, had to be. Brandt's voice cut through the static on the comms. Team 1, perimeter. Teams 2 and 3, get the tents up, now. Lieutenant Sarah Keene, compact and precise, moved with her squad toward the medical canopy crates. On it, Cap. Generators in place in 3. 2 local militia leaders, a Droskari chieftain wrapped in crimson plating and a lean, angular crayon with sand-colored mandibles, stood off to the side, watching with attentive eyes. Their languages didn't match, but their mistrust was shared. They didn't interfere. Not today. The neutral zone sat in a valley surrounded by bombed-out ridgelines. Broken walkers rusted in the distance, their armor peeled back like burnt tin. The makeshift landing zone was marked with white thermal beacons, fragile symbols of peace, like paint on a gun barrel. Within minutes, the tents were up, the generators humming, and the cots lined in tight rows. Alien civilians arrived in waves. Injured Yasari, their luminous skin dimmed by blood loss, were carried on improvised stretchers. A young Jarnai boy, all spindly limbs and translucent bone plates, cried silently as his mother's shredded wing was bandaged. Brandt moved through the chaos like a pillar. He wasn't a doctor, but he stabilized 3 patients in 5 minutes flat, his hands steady, voice low, eyes locked on each wound like it insulted him personally. His medics respected him not because he was loud, but because he never flinched. A tall Varnock child, forearms, slit pupils, chest torn open by shrapnel, lay on the triage table. Keene, clamp here, now. The girl whimpered, one of her lower arms jerking involuntarily. Look at me, Brandt said, eyes locked on hers. Breathe. You're gonna make it. She nodded, barely, but she held still. Outside, a sandstorm brewed on the horizon, and something else. Private Alan Reyes glanced at the ridgeline. Captain, got movement. Brandt didn't turn. Define movement. Convoy. Black banners, not militia, fast. Brandt looked up. Over the ridge, armored transports roared forward, kicking up a wall of dust. The banners were unmistakable, deep black with a white serpent coiled around a blood-red sun. Kavarn Sael. Damn it. Brandt stood, blood on his gloves. They gave their word. Get me the relay. Sergeant Marcus Harlan was already on it, voice raised to the command channel. This is a neutral zone. You are violating ceasefire terms negotiated with Interplanetary Mediation Authority. Pull back! No response. Just the roar of engines and the metallic grind of treads chewing rock. Brandt's jaw clenched. He stepped outside the tent as the first transport braked hard, spraying grit across the camp. Doors slammed open. Dozens of soldiers poured out, black and silver armor glinting under the twin suns. Their rifles, short-barreled, overcharged, were already raised. None wore insignia. Their faces were masked, not for protection, for show. Keene emerged from the tent, her face pale. Sir, what do we do? Brandt's hand hovered near his belt, where no weapon hung. We do our job. He raised his hands, stepping forward. I'm Captain Hank Brandt of the United Human Forces. We're here under authorization from the Senate and planetary intermediaries. We are treating civilians, most of them non-combatants. Stand down, now. The soldiers didn't move. From the back of the formation, a man emerged. Kavarn Sael was lean, tall, and dressed in obsidian armor etched with tribal scars. His skin, pale green and slick, reflected the light like oil. He wore no helmet. His eyes were dark pits, unreadable, "Captain Brandt," he said, voice dry as stone. "You came here with good intentions. That makes you dangerous. People start believing in better futures when men like you show up. That's when order begins to slip." Brandt didn't blink. "You're violating every code of interplanetary engagement." Cavan gave a small smile. "You brought hope. These people were beginning to believe you. That cannot be allowed." He nodded. The world slowed. The nearest soldier raised his rifle. Keen screamed. Brandt turned, instinct, not thought, and threw himself over the Varnock girl still lying on the table. The rifle cracked. His body jerked as the blast tore through his back, punching out his chest in a bloom of red. The girl beneath him cried out unharmed. The tent exploded into chaos. Someone shouted, "Weapons! Get the wounded out!" Another medic fumbled with a data pad, trying to signal the dropship. Harlan pulled Keen back from the tent's flap, screaming at her to move. But her eyes were fixed on the captain's body. Kavarn stepped forward, rifle still hot in his soldier's hands. He looked at the corpse for a second, then turned his gaze on the rest of the camp. "Let them flee," he said, voice like rust. "Let them carry the message." The soldier with the camera drone nodded. It was already live. Across the system, millions watched as a human captain died protecting a child that wasn't even his. The feed didn't cut. It lingered on Brandt's body, on the child clinging to his coat, on the chaos as the medics scrambled to evacuate under gunfire. There was no defense, only smoke, screams, and triage packs dropped in the dust. The evac shuttle touched down fast and low, kicking up a storm of debris. Medics hauled wounded over their shoulders. Some dropped their kits mid-run. One medic stopped, just long enough to scream into the dust, before someone shoved him into the ramp. Reyes ran, dragging a bleeding Za-Eth nurse with him, her tendrils limp and scorched. Keen was last, her face streaked with blood, not hers, and her arms locked around the Varnock child, still alive, still crying. As the ramp lifted and sealed shut, she pressed her head to the wall and screamed silently. 37 seconds later, the shuttle was gone. And Captain Hank Brandt was still on the ground, his body broken, cradling the child he'd saved. In the domed chamber of the Interplanetary Senate, the footage played twice. Then the feed cut to a pale, wide-eyed spokesperson from the Senate's Public Relations Committee. "We regret the loss of life during the ongoing instability in Vorash. A full investigation will be conducted. The Senate issues its condolences to the family of Captain Brandt and to the human delegation. We urge all systems to remain calm and respect the mediation protocols in place." The feed ended. On Earth, it didn't. Within hours, the image was everywhere. Brandt, bloodied, shielding an alien child. A crowd gathered outside the Earth Embassy on Luna. Candles. Silence. Veterans stood at attention in the cold with no orders given. Not holding a weapon, not issuing threats. Just protecting someone smaller than himself. Comment threads exploded. News anchors struggled to speak. In refugee shelters across 3 systems, alien civilians whispered his name. Noah Brandt saw the video at 03:17 a.m. local time. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stared at the screen, fists clenched so tight his knuckles cracked. The world had watched a human die for someone not his own. The Senate sent condolences, but Earth was going to send something else. The rifles fired in perfect sync. 21 shots cracked through the cold morning air, echoing across the cliffs above the Colorado Range. Snow dusted the shoulders of the honor guard. Each man stood rigid, polished boots planted in frost, their uniforms a study in precision, navy blue, crimson stripes, medals worn clean. The flag of Earth hung at half-mast over the procession, unmoving. Rows of black uniformed soldiers flanked the central aisle, lining the path toward the marble plinth. The casket rested atop it, draped in the planetary standard, white stars over a black field. Captain Hank Brandt's name was etched into a steel plaque beneath it. No rank, no commendations, just his name, because everyone already knew who he was. A single-string quartet played a solemn hymn. No words, no eulogy yet. Only silence and wait. Lieutenant Noah Brandt stood motionless at the front of the family section. His jaw was tight, eyes dry, posture carved in stone. His dress uniform sat pristine on his shoulders, ribbons lined in perfect alignment, service pins catching the pale morning sun. Only his hands betrayed him, clenched so hard behind his back, the knuckles had turned bloodless white. General Edgar Markov, chairman of the Earth Defense Council, approached the podium. No speech in hand, no teleprompter. Just the thick voice of a man who had buried too many soldiers already. He was a soldier, Markov began, eyes scanning the field of black coats. But he was never just that. Hank Brandt saved more lives than most of us will ever meet, and when the time came, he died doing what he always did, shielding the defenseless. The general looked to Noah, then back to the crowd. We are told to be patient, to wait for answers, to let diplomacy do its work. A pause. But Captain Brandt did not die by mistake. He was executed, on a ceasefire zone, while protecting a child. Noah's chest rose once sharply. Markov continued. The Senate offered words. Earth will offer something else. Silence followed. Then the coffin was lowered into the tomb, hydraulics sighing as steel met stone. There was no salute, no anthem, only the hollow finality of a life cut short. When the crowd dispersed, Noah remained behind. Alone at the edge of the grave, snow melting on his shoulders, he whispered, I won't let them bury your name with you. His mother, Evelyn Brandt, stepped forward slowly from the shadow of the crowd. Her eyes were swollen, her movements fragile, as if each step cost more than she could afford. She reached the edge of the tomb and dropped to her knees, pressing both hands against the cold steel of the marker. He was everything, she said, her voice barely a breath. He wasn't supposed to be down there. Not like this. Noah knelt beside her, his posture unchanged, but his tone softened. He's not down there. He's in every life he saved. That's what he left behind. She looked at him through tears, as if searching for something in her son's eyes, something still intact. Just promise me you won't follow him too soon. Noah didn't speak, but his hand rested gently over hers, grounding her. That was enough. 12 hours later, the transmission hit every major relay beacon in the Orion sectors. It bore the seal of the Earth Defense Council, encrypted for open diplomatic access. The language was formal, unmistakable. To all parties under Interplanetary Charter and the Vorash System governance, you have 48 hours to surrender the individual known as Kavarn Sael to Earth custody. Failure to comply will be interpreted as refusal to cooperate with justice. There was no mention of retaliation, no warning of consequences, just the ticking of the clock. In the grand amphitheater of the Interplanetary Senate, the message was received in session. The chamber, built like an inverted dome of glass and steel, reflected hundreds of delegates, species of all forms and sizes, robes and respirators, tentacles and scaled limbs. High Chancellor Torek of the Hilari Alliance, skin like hammered silver and voice smooth as wind over ice, leaned forward, a rather aggressive tone. Across from him, Delegate Euros of the Tanari Swarm, a chitin-armored figure with dual larynx modulation, clicked out a laugh. 48 hours? That's not diplomacy. That's a tantrum. The chuckles rippled across several rows. Delegate Ryan of the Ralos Hegemony stood, his serpentine neck coiling as he spoke with disdain. If every species responded like this to the death of one man, there'd be no galaxy left to govern. The murmurs that followed were not all amused. Some representatives, the smaller coalitions, the frontier systems, shifted in their seats. Ambassador Jonah Reddick, Earth's senior diplomatic envoy, rose from his seat as the mocking laughter echoed through the chamber. I suggest, he said, each word measured, that the delegates here remember this session is being recorded, for history, for your people. Silence settled over the room. Some turned away, others shifted uncomfortably. No one laughed again. Reddick adjusted his cuffs, eyes fixed forward. Earth mourns her dead. The question now is how long the rest of you will pretend this isn't your problem. Then he sat, shoulders squared, gaze unwavering. On Earth, the protests erupted. Outside the Senate's orbital embassy on Luna, a crowd of civilians stood shoulder to shoulder, holding portraits of Hank Brandt. On Mars, veterans rallied silently, armor repainted in black, visors down. In Neo-Tokyo, hundreds lit sky lanterns with the inscription, "He protected yours. Now protect his name." News streams blazed. Commentators demanded action. Foreign dignitaries sent mixed messages, some urging calm, others retreating into silence. Public pressure mounted like a wave building behind the walls of protocol. Inside the steel bastion beneath Oslo Command, the Earth Defense Council's primary operations center, the decision had already been made. General Markov paced before a panel of military brass. Holograms hovered between them, maps of Varash, intercepted communications, movement logs. The Interplanetary Senate laughed, he said, voice hard. Let them laugh. General Howard Conrad, sharp-eyed and clean-shaven, nodded. "We deploy?" "We deploy," Markov confirmed. Then he turned to the figure standing at the rear of the room, arms crossed. Noah. Lieutenant Brandt stepped forward. He looked sharper now, not calmer, just more focused. The grief hadn't faded, it had hardened. "You're leading this." A muscle twitched in Noah's cheek. "Yes, sir." "Any objections?" Markov asked the room. "None." "Then you'll receive classified authorization and access to judgment." A beat passed. Even the officers stilled. Conrad exhaled. "That ship doesn't exist." Markov looked at him. "It does now." Back inside command, Markov stood before a digital wall lined with data feeds and encrypted files. A single sentence glowed on screen in red. Mission authorization, Special Operation Orchid Fury. Commander, Lieutenant Noah Brandt. Objective, retrieval of Kavan sail. Noah placed his palm on the biometric scanner. The panel beeped once, access granted. Markov's voice was low, almost private. "You're not going out there for revenge. You're going for consequence." "I know what this is," Noah replied, "and I know who I am." "Then make sure the galaxy knows it too," Markov said. Markov studied him, then nodded once. "Bring him back, alive." Across Earth's networks, the clock was ticking. 48 hours. The galaxy had laughed. They would not be laughing much longer. On military monitors across 3 systems, a red counter blinked down from 48 days. Beneath Europa's crust, the reinforced bulkhead slid open with a hydraulic growl, revealing a chamber carved into the ice and lit by narrow strips of white-blue LEDs. At the far end, docked in a pressurized void, was a vessel that shouldn't exist. UHS Judgment. She was dark as obsidian, matte-skinned, angular in design, shaped for speed, silence, and surgical destruction. No registry number, no nameplate. Just a hull without identity, as if the ship itself had been erased from every naval record before it was even born. Lieutenant Noah Brandt stepped through the blast doors, his boots echoing over steel. 2 armed technicians in blackout armor saluted and stood aside, revealing the command ramp already lowered. General Edgar Markov walked beside him, slower now, letting his words fall carefully. "She doesn't broadcast, doesn't ping, and won't respond to any hails once she's out. Not stealth, ghost." Noah nodded. Markov continued. "You'll be operating under no recognized authority. If this goes sideways, the Council won't protect you." Noah paused at the edge of the ramp and looked up at the ship's face, sleek, sharp, silent. "I'm not going to make a statement," he said. "I'm going to end one. Inside the Judgment, the air was still, the lighting dim. Consoles flickered with low-energy pulses, awaiting hands that knew what to do without needing to be told. Major Jace Moran was already in the war room. Early 40s, squared shoulders, face lined by more campaigns than most officers had survived. He stood at the holotable with arms crossed. His right eye, a military-grade prosthetic, glowed faintly red as it scanned the mission brief. "Noah," he said without turning. "Didn't think I'd serve under you. Your father, sure. You?" Guess time's got a sense of irony. "I didn't ask for this," Noah replied. "I know," Moran said. "That's why I trust you." Along the corridors, the rest of the team was gearing up. 10 operators, all veterans, all hand-picked, none of them fresh. Every one of them had bled beside Captain Hank Brandt at some point in their careers. Staff Sergeant Luca Danner checked the pressure seals on his gauntlets. His voice was gravel. "I was on Altara 6 when he pulled a burning dropship off a trench line with one arm in a sling. You think I'm letting that bastard who killed him breathe easy?" "Not a chance," replied Corporal Jennings, adjusting the sling mount on a plasma railgun. In the armory, the silence wasn't cold. It was sharp. No jokes, no bravado. Just measured hands loading magazines, syncing neural combat links, finalizing movement protocols. They didn't talk about revenge. They prepared for justice. At the central command station, Noah checked the mission queue. The red digital clock above the screen counted down from 3507:14. He tapped the comm channel. "All units, report to briefing." They assembled in the tactical bay, standing around the holotable as the projected map of Vorash expanded in front of them. Cities, militia zones, dead zones, and the suspected location of Kavarn Sale's primary compound. Noah's voice was low, but resonant. "You all knew him. You served with him. Some of you owed him your life. I owe him more than that." The room stayed silent. He died protecting children from someone who thinks civilians are leverage. That alone earns him a bullet. Danner muttered, "Preferably 2. "But we're not here to burn Vorash to the ground," Noah continued. "We're here to surgically remove one name from its throne and leave every warlord watching wondering if they're next." He paused, then added, "This is not retribution. It's an audit." The team nodded as one. Later, in the loading bay, with the ramp still down and the stars of Jupiter's system glinting faintly through the force shield, Evelyn Brandt stood facing her son. She wore the same gray coat as the funeral, but her face had changed, no longer shattered, just lined with quiet fear. Noah stood in full tactical gear, his helmet hung at his side, fingers curled around its edge. She looked up at him, searching again for some trace of the boy who used to sit beside her during night storms, asking questions about the stars. "Please," she said, barely above a whisper. "Don't let this destroy what's left of you." Noah stepped close. His hand gripped hers firmly. "I will bring them to justice," he said, "even if it's the last thing I ever do." She blinked fast, bit her lip, nodded, and then she turned and walked away, slow, steady, never looking back. In the cockpit, Lieutenant Arjun Vale ran the last of the diagnostics. Short, broad, calm under pressure, Vale had flown everything from diplomatic shuttles to infiltration craft. He turned as Noah entered. "All systems green. Course locked to Vorash. You're sure about no handshake protocols?" He met Vale's eyes. "Silent entry. No announcements. We go in dead to the grid. Copy that." Vale flipped the ignition matrix. Jump drive spooling in 30 seconds. Moran and Danner entered the bridge and took their stations without a word. Noah stood at the center rail, helmet under his arm, gaze forward. Below the surface of Europa, the Judgment powered up with barely a sound. Panels shimmered. The ship began to rise inside its launch cradle. "Engage," Noah said. The stars stretched, space folded, and the Judgment vanished. Then, one alert flashed inside a sealed terminal at Oslo Command. Judgment in transit. Destination, Vorash. Status, non-declared. Above Vorash 12, the black shape of the Judgment emerged from FTL with no distortion wave, no energy flare, just a sudden, silent presence. Inside the Orbital Defense Center, alarms screamed. Unknown vessel detected. No transponder, no ID, no mass signature. It's there, but it's not registering. What kind of stealth is this? The command deck of the Vorash planetary defense grid lit up in panicked motion. Operators rushed between cracked terminals, slamming override commands into outdated interfaces. Half the systems flickered in and out of coherence. One officer cursed in Tariq, pounding a frozen targeting display with the heel of his fist. General Varnik Sayel, older brother of Kavarn, stood in the center of the platform, broad-chested, copper-skinned, with ceremonial fangs etched into his pauldrons. His voice sliced through the chaos like a blade. Calm yourselves. Activate full scan arrays. Get visual confirmation. There's no telemetry, sir. Sensors are bouncing back corrupted or blank. Then use eyes, Varnik growled. One of the junior officers opened an external feed. The view snapped into focus on the screen. A matte black silhouette, angular and unfamiliar, parked motionless above the upper thermosphere. Varnik stared for a long moment. His lip twitched, barely, and he turned away before anyone could see it. What is that? He muttered, as much to himself as to the room. Watching. Then the transmission hit. It bypassed encrypted lines and command hierarchies, flooding all systems, civilian and military alike. 1 hour. After that, there will be no throne, no regime, no memory of your name. On the surface of Vorash 12, in the capital city of Harazni, chaos spread like acid through cracks. Local broadcasters tried to explain the signal, but every attempt was cut by internal censors. Within minutes, entire communication hubs were blacked out. Kavarn's regime initiated total lockdown. News stations raided, data towers shut down, terminals disabled. Civilians caught trying to share the audio were arrested in the street. It didn't matter. The message had already escaped, smuggled through pocket comms, recorded on cheap devices, repeated in whispers across alleyways and basements. The words were simple, but the meaning was seismic. 1 hour. In the mountains east of the Red Basin, a militia outpost housing the 17th Raider Battalion stood at alert. Commander Rek Tavir, short, stocky, scarred across the scalp, paced along the trench line, barking orders. Don't believe their threats. This is posturing, human theater, drama, and bluster. We've held this ground for 6 years and we'll hold it another 6. A low rumble interrupted him. The Judgment hadn't fired. It hadn't moved, but their orbital feed was gone. Not jammed. Deleted. The system rebooted to factory state, asking for default setup. Private Sorix, a young Varnock conscript, stared at the blank screen. Commander, they didn't block us. They unwrote us. Tavir froze. In a forward operations base 200 clicks south, Lieutenant Bragan Gel, a Droskari with pale skin and spined arms, opened a secure channel to Central Command. This is FOB 9, requesting status of orbital assets. No answer. He tried again. And again. The line remained dead. Gel lowered the receiver. Around him, soldiers checked their rifles. Others looked to the sky. Some walked. They didn't speak. They didn't shout. They just laid down their weapons and vanished into the valleys. In the palace of Kavarn Sail, deep inside the armored spires of Karset Prime, the warlord watched the skies from a narrow viewport in the war chamber. The city stretched below, dense slums in the outer rings, crumbling towers rising like thorns. His eyes were locked on the stars above, where one point of darkness refused to twinkle. Kavarn clenched his fists. His breathing was measured, but the pulse visible on his neck betrayed the tension. Advisor Rel Voris, a thin Hilari in gold-trimmed diplomatic robes, approached from the side. You should respond. Even symbolic defiance can rally the masses. Kavarn didn't look at him. They think they can rattle me with shadows, he said. I ruled this system before the Senate even learned its name. Voris hesitated. But the Senate knows it now, and they're watching. Kavarn's jaw tensed. Then let them watch. He turned. Scramble the 12th Guard. Deploy the fireborne heavy mechs to the East Barracks. Initiate blockades in all districts. Anyone caught spreading the transmission, execute them. Yes, my lord. In the back alleys of Karsit Prime, a boy no older than 10 crouched beside a broken terminal, holding an old receiver to his ear. The voice still rang in his mind, even after the signal died. He looked at his mother, a Yaisari healer with luminous scars down her throat, and whispered, Mama, is that the one who helped the clinics? She nodded slowly. The one who died for the children. The boy stared up at the sky. Then he's not gone, he whispered. He just changed sides. In a rural commune near the Red Salt Plateau, a village elder gathered families into the old root cellar. The walls were reinforced, the supplies stocked. No one goes outside, he said, no matter what you hear, no matter what falls. One of the younger men leaned close. Why would they threaten the whole planet? The elder, a crayon with silver chitin and missing mandibles, responded in a whisper. They didn't threaten us. They named one man. Inside the judgment, the bridge was dark. The crew watched without speaking. Noah stood with arms crossed, eyes fixed on a display tracking planetary movement. Military units dispersing, others vanishing. They're already breaking, said Major Moran. Not from fire, from fear. Lieutenant Vale ran a sweep on external surveillance. Multiple militia strongholds are going dark, not from attack. They're pulling their own power. Danner smirked grimly. They think it'll hide them. They can try, Noah said. On the surface, some civilians wept, others waited. And in a dozen command centers, regime officers watched the clock and realized that for the first time in their lives, they were no longer the ones holding the trigger. Above them, the judgment simply waited, and the galaxy had never felt silence so loud. The first impact came 37 minutes after the warning. A rail-fired kinetic slug struck the command bunker of the Garan 4 outpost at 19,000 kilometers per hour, passing through 8 meters of reinforced alloycrete before igniting the ammunition bay beneath. The explosion wasn't loud from orbit, but on the ground, it folded the entire complex inward, fire blooming upward like the throat of a volcano. 17 seconds later, the communications tower at Keltraz fell. No alarms. No counterfire. Just a flash from above, and then the entire structure snapped at its base. Clean. Silent. Inside the judgment, Noah Brandt stood at the edge of the tactical board, arms locked behind his back. He didn't speak. The crew moved with quiet certainty, every motion deliberate. Target 3 confirmed, said Lieutenant Vale. Alam 2 Weapons Depot, firing in 5. Major Moran gave a short nod. All personnel evac confirmed. Civilians cleared. Military signatures only. Do it. From orbit, the judgment released a single projectile. It didn't arc. It didn't burn. It simply vanished into atmosphere. And 1 heartbeat later, Alim 2 ceased to exist. On the surface, panic metastasized. The 12th Guard, once considered Kavarn's elite enforcement unit, abandoned their checkpoint in Saran province after their forward armor convoy disintegrated without warning. No explosion, no debris, just absence. Captain Rel Dravik, a Krayan commander with split-mandible armor and thermal-hardened optics, tried to regroup his men outside the ruins of Kesh. His hands trembled as he activated his comm relay. Central, this is Dravik. We are requesting immediate terms of surrender. I repeat, terms of... The feed cut off mid-transmission. Not jammed. Deleted. The judgment didn't respond. Noah had already made the order clear. They weren't here to negotiate. 39 minutes into the assault, 7 full military installations had been eliminated. Each strike was precise, Every detonation intentional. Barracks, power cores, communication nodes, reduced to blackened, smoking craters. No civilian districts were touched. Not one structure outside the intended grid was hit. Inside the central palace, Kavarn Sael tore the control interface from the wall with both hands. Sparks burst from the panel as wires snapped. His command network had gone silent. Base after base had stopped responding. He stumbled, sweat sheening over his green skin. His voice cracked as he barked at the guards flanking the doorway. "Prep the Mantics. Now, we're going underground. Full retreat. Scramble escort flight." One of the officers hesitated. "My lord, the Mantics corridor hasn't been cleared. We've had structural—" "Do it!" Kavarn roared, eyes wide, veins raised on his neck. "You think they're going to stop with bases? You think this ends with my door still standing?" Rel Voris, now pale beneath his Hilari skin, stepped cautiously into the chamber. "We should stay. Issue a public response. Control the message." "They've already spoken," Kavarn snapped, yanking a sidearm from the wall. "And now they're erasing the entire chapter." In the desert flatlands outside the ruins of Garash Station, a rock outcrop shimmered. Then it moved. From beneath the illusion field, 3 human operators in sealed recon suits emerged. Black armor, matte visors, insignia stripped. The lead moved forward in silence, gesturing with 2 fingers. "Target confirmed. Mobile relay ping active. Kavarn's evacuation protocol just went live." Sergeant Cole Ryman checked his scanner. "Signal's weak but traceable. He's moving southwest, probably toward the mountain vault." "Exactly as predicted," said the third. "The bastard's running." Above them, far beyond cloud layer, the Judgment held position. It didn't need to follow. It had already finished its part. Now it was time for the boots on the ground. Back in the palace tunnels, Kavarn ducked beneath a blast door, guards at his sides, the inner chambers humming with emergency power. Every step echoed too loud. Every corridor felt too narrow. He could still hear the voice from orbit, still feel the weight of that silence afterward. The Mantic's transport, a hybrid crawler shuttle with quad-thruster atmospheric lift, rumbled to life at the end of the tunnel. A tech scrambled toward its side port, waving Kavarn in. "Launch sequence in 90 seconds. "Open the tunnel exit now," Kavarn ordered. "We can't," the tech replied. "The exit vault's locked under external override." "What override?" The tech didn't answer, because the lights cut out. A single flashlight flicked on in the dark, and then another, and another. 5 points of light moving in sync, entering through the far breach. The guards raised their weapons, too slow. The first was hit with a single shot to the knee and shoulder. The second dropped before his trigger finger even twitched. The third tried to run and was tackled, stunned, dragged back. Kavarn backed toward the crawler, fumbling with his weapon. "Who are you?" The lights didn't answer, but the sound of boots, measured, relentless, said everything. The lead man stepped into the half-glow of the auxiliary lights. Helmet off, black suit, eyes sharp as obsidian. The shadow from orbit now had a name, Noah Brandt. Kavarn froze. "I have diplomatic immunity," Kavarn blurted. "You can't—" Noah raised his hand. A stun round hit Kavarn in the ribs. The warlord collapsed, choking, his weapon still half drawn. Noah didn't flinch. He just stepped forward and looked down, like he'd finally closed a door. Outside, the horizon glowed with the fading fires of 7 lost fortresses. Smoke rolled into the upper stratosphere. Drones blinked in silence, scanning for survivors, but found only heatless metal. In the distance, villagers from the lower hills watched the storm pass over the land. And in the black sky above it all, the Judgment waited. No more threats, no more words, only the echo of justice and the weight of a name reclaimed. The containment chamber aboard the Judgment was quiet, too quiet for a war criminal. Low white lighting washed over steel walls lined with magnetic locks and biometric scramblers. The air was still, sterile, heavy. Restraints clicked shut around Kavarn Sale's wrists. Noah Brandt stood in front of the prisoner. His hands hung at his sides, one trembling slightly, the other pale from tension. The pressure in his grip was enough to make his fingers ache, but he didn't move. His gaze remained fixed on Kavarn. Kavarn sat hunched in the grav chair, thick shackles binding his arms and legs. His armor had been stripped, replaced with a containment suit. He no longer looked regal or untouchable. His skin, oil-slick green with patches of purple bruising from the stun round, glistened with dried sweat. Still, his eyes remained sharp. Predatory. "Was it tactical?" Noah asked finally. His voice was low, like it had been held too long. "Or was it just bloodlust?" Kavarn tilted his head, amused. "Tactical? Please." Noah didn't move. A faint vibration passed through Kavarn's throat, low and deliberate, like a creature settling into contempt. Hank Brandt wasn't just a soldier. He was a myth in a uniform. You know how dangerous that is in a place like Varash. The people down there, scavengers, farmers, outcasts, they were starting to believe in him, starting to think they mattered. The plates along his jaw flexed, a gesture not unlike a sneer. He walked into my world and made them hope. That alone was treason enough. I didn't execute a man. I removed a weight from the throat of order. Noah stepped closer, one stride, nothing more. The silence between them buzzed with something unspoken. The other soldiers in the room didn't dare breathe. Then Noah's hand moved. He unholstered his sidearm and leveled it against Kavarn's throat. The muzzle pressed into soft alien flesh. Slowly. Kavarn blinked, but didn't flinch. "Ah, there it is." Noah's voice was barely above a whisper. "I can still lighten the burden. The weight of your head off your body." A second passed. 2. Then Noah drew in a breath and stepped back. The gun lowered. He stared at Kavarn, eyes hollow but firm. "He wouldn't want me to become the kind of man who kills unarmed prisoners. That makes you lucky. Your fate isn't mine to decide." He holstered the weapon. But the tremor in his hand betrayed just how close he had come to crossing the line. The atmosphere transport ascended from the surface of Vorash in silence. Inside, Kavarn sat chained between 2 armed escorts. A sensor hood blinked red across his temple, monitoring vitals, tracking movement. His legs had been locked to the floor clamps. No one spoke to him. Noah stood near the side viewport, watching the burnt ridgelines fall away beneath the cloud cover. Cities below stood motionless, like statues holding their breath. Outside, villagers emerged from half-buried homes and fractured shelters. They didn't cheer. They didn't protest. They just looked up, at the ship, at the figure shackled inside it, and at the quiet man who stood above it all. The image went live on open spectrum broadcast. Kavarn Sale, warlord of Vorash, arms bound in carbon steel restraints, being lifted into orbit by a human military transport. There were no declarations, just the feed. In the outer systems, planets aligned with Vorash cut their transmissions within seconds. Others blurred the footage. A few tried to claim it was fabricated, but it was too late. The image spread faster than any declaration. Not a warning, a sentence. Inside the Judgment's command deck, the team sat in silence. The ops feed showed footage from 6 angles: live data from the transport, orbital relays, atmospheric mapping. Noah entered slowly, gloved hands still tight. He stood by the viewport for a moment, as the transport docked, then turned. Sergeant Danner broke the silence. His voice was hoarse, not from emotion, but from restraint. "Your father would have understood," he said, "but he wouldn't have wanted you to lose your soul for it." Noah nodded once, without looking up. He was a true soldier, and a better man than most deserve. He looked across the room at the team: Moran, Vale, Danner, Jennings, the ones who had followed him through fire without hesitation. Then he added, quiet but certain, I didn't come pretending to be him. I came because someone had to carry the weight he refused to drop. Nobody replied. They didn't need to. Above the planet, the judgment began its course correction. Engines realigned, trajectory locked, destination, interplanetary Senate core. Noah stepped toward the tactical console and keyed in the authorization code for diplomatic re-entry. The stars shifted around them, and the planet below shrank into the dark. No one asked what would come next. They already knew. The execution had ended. The reckoning was just beginning. The delegation from Earth stepped into the Senate chamber, not as diplomats, but as judges who had already passed sentence. The blast doors parted with a mechanical shudder, revealing the central floor of the Interplanetary Senate, an arena of politics carved from alloy and tradition. The room was already full, buzzing with the overlapping voices of over 100 species. The moment the humans entered, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence. Eyes turned, stomachs knotted. Lieutenant Noah Brandt walked at the front, straight-backed in full military dress. Behind him, Major Jace Moran, Sergeant Luca Danner, Lieutenant Arjun Vale, and Corporal Jennings moved in rigid sync. None of them spoke. And between them, shackled and stripped of his former glory, walked Kavarn Sayel. The warlord's arms were bound in front of him by grav cuffs that blinked red at every step. His once ornate skin now bore bruises and dried cuts. Every movement he made was watched by armed guards with fingers curled close to triggers. A low whisper passed through the upper tiers of the chamber. That's him. Impossible. They actually brought him here. Several alien delegates leaned forward to confirm what they were seeing. Others reclined, shifting uncomfortably in their seats, as if the weight of the human presence pressed on their spines. Chancellor Torek of the Hilari Alliance narrowed his metallic eyes, the silver ridges on his face catching the overhead light. Beside him, Delegate Bralin of the Tanari Swarm emitted a sequence of clicking syllables and folded his chitin-covered arms with a hiss of irritation. "They brought a prisoner into this chamber?" Noah ignored them. His boots echoed across the polished stone as the group descended the central ramp. Every step carved pressure into the air. Guards along the perimeter stiffened. More than a few gripped their weapons without realizing. In the corner, Senator Varkos of the Dreelan Combine paled and tapped frantically at his interface console. He'd seen the footage. He knew what was coming. At the heart of the room, Noah stopped. He turned to face the Ring of Power, representatives of every major species in the known galaxy, all arrayed in their separate sectors like gods judging mortals. But today, the roles were reversed. Noah stepped forward and placed a data cube on the center dais. "Record," he said. The system obeyed. A soft chime echoed through the hall, and the lights dimmed slightly as the dome above them transformed into a full-sphere projection field. The first image flickered to life. Captain Hank Brandt, bloodied, lifeless, draped over an alien child, shielding her with his body. No editing, no narration. Just the cold, unfiltered feed that made an entire system stop breathing. Gasps broke out. A representative from the Tharum Confederacy pressed a trembling hand to his translator collar. The senator from the Varnak Accord looked away, visibly shaken. Then came the rest. Footage from the medical tent, the live broadcast from Kavarn's troops, audio logs of commands issued, biometric verification, time-stamped orders bearing Kavarn's encoded signature, visuals of the execution. Emissary Gorvel of the Droskari muttered a prayer. Senator Kriesel of the Sarth Coalition gagged, then bent forward and vomited between his clawed feet. And the cascade continued. Financial records, bribes, transaction logs tied to off-world accounts, names, codes, confessions, proof of collusion. Trails leading not just to Kavarn, but branching outward, to people seated in that very chamber. Chaos began to ripple. Voices rose in a dozen languages. A senator from the Zenkari domain stood shouting over her microphone. trying to deny a document being projected directly behind her head. Several aides ran to their superiors' sides, whispering fast, eyes darting to exits. One guard actually reached for the emergency lockdown protocol, then froze when he saw the humans hadn't moved. Noah didn't lift his voice. He didn't need to. He just stood there, staring ahead, watching the unraveling of a facade that had held for decades. Major Moran scanned the room with a measured look, jaw tight. Sergeant Danner whispered, not to Noah, but to no one in particular. Looks like they just found out who's been living above the fire. The images shifted. The footage now showed Kavarn signing orders in his war chamber, clips of him mocking the ceasefire, laughing at the idea of interplanetary law, declaring in no uncertain terms that Hank Brandt's death had been necessary. Every delegate saw it, every word broadcast, and in that moment, even those who once laughed at Earth fell completely, totally silent. Noah stepped forward again. He touched the data cube once more, and the visuals stopped. The lights returned. He turned his eyes upward. No negotiation, no debate, no vote, he said flatly. Then he looked directly at Delegate Reen of the Ralos hegemony, the same one who had scoffed at Earth's initial demand. Reen couldn't meet his gaze. Several seats away, a Krayan senator was already gone. Just an empty chair where he had been sitting seconds earlier. Noah took one step back. He placed both hands behind his back. We came to remind you what justice looks like, when the galaxy forgets. He didn't wait for a response. He turned. The others followed, and together, the human delegation ascended the ramp, leaving the data cube on the central altar. Its red light pulsed softly, the only thing still moving. No one tried to stop them. The delegation didn't look back. Somewhere in the upper tiers, a delegate whispered, "They made no demands." Another voice, hollow, "That was the demand." As the chamber doors slid shut behind the delegation, the stunned silence deepened. No procedural motion was made, no vote was called. For once, in the highest court of diplomacy in the galaxy, there was nothing left to say, and that was the loudest message of all. Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind, or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Oh, and one last thing. Every great soldier knows that to survive and become a hero, taking care of yourself is key. So before you go, check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's important. And I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.